Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Janan Sarwar, and on behalf of ITVusa, I'd like to welcome you to our daily Ramadan show entitled Our Prosperous Ramadan. On this show, we interview inspirational Muslims to learn more about what they do in their professional spheres and communities and how they are prospering this Ramadan. It's my honor today to introduce Deputy Inspector Adeel Rana. He currently serves as the Deputy Inspector in the New York Police Department and also is the president of the New York Police Department Muslim Officer Society. In 2020, he made history by becoming the first Muslim American to be appointed as the commanding officer of a precinct in the force's history. Last December, the New York Police Department, NYPD, actually made history by appointing him as that first ever Pakistani American deputy inspector. As you'll hear me share, he has an immense array of experience. He's been involved with several groups related to law enforcement. In his past, among many things, he's overseen issues of domestic violence, to traffic safety, to anti crime, and many more. All of these efforts with the NYPD have fostered relationships that both build trust and establish communications among communities. MashaAllah, he's been able to serve the community and help keep the city safe. There are so many things I can say about this brother that he has done, but I look forward, without any further introduction, to introduce him to all of you today. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
Good, thank God. At the last week of Ramadan, just excited. I can't believe it fly by so quick.
SubhanAllah, yes, time is flying. And I mentioned so many things about you, but I want to hear from you. Is there anything that I forgot to share that you want to share with the audience listening today about your accomplishments or your background?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot to share, especially, it's not only my accomplishment, it's the community's accomplishment. It's all our brothers and sisters that are serving their accomplishment. So pretty much, as you mentioned, I'm the president of the Muslim Officer Society, which represent Muslims in law enforcement. Obviously, as you can see, Muslims are not, I mean, they are new to this country. They're not, here for generations. So, there's not that many, or there were not that many Muslims serving in law enforcement until now. Thank God, when before even my time, they were after 9/11, there were brothers that, came together because they saw what was going on. They saw, what our community was dealing with. They saw what, the few that were serving at that time were going through. So um, I just have to, commend them first of all to come together and, taking that step to bring each other together. And which led to more officers, more I would say more youth learning about the opportunity to join this great career, and it led us to forming a society, Muslim Officer Society, which now has close to or a little bit over 2,000 members that are serving just in NYPD. I mean, daily, or I would say, throughout my time, I'm continuing to meet people that are serving. Not only like a low rank but high rank throughout the country. I've just recently met a chief from Ohio who's a Muslim. A chief. Just imagine, he's chief of the whole department. Like obviously, New York City is a little different, rank structure wise. It's a little different, but if you go out throughout the country, like some places after captain is usually a chief, and then the rank structure is not that tall as the NYPD. So but again, it's a great accomplishment to see a Muslim brother that's leading the whole police department. So I met him. I met other individuals. Throughout the country. In Texas, there's a Muslim chief. There's a Muslim sheriff. So we went from somewhere like, barely having any representation to like, having representation in higher ranks. So it's a great accomplishment for our community. It's a great accomplishment for our next generation. So there's a lot to say, but I guess I'll leave it up to you to see which direction you want me to go. But like I
Yeah.
say, I can go on and on forever. So I need you to make sure that I don't do that.
No problem. No, mashallah, that's very impressive. So let's start talking about the Muslim Officer Society. So you mentioned now you're representing over 2,000 members. These are officers, is that right? Tell us more about the mission of what the Muslim Officer Society does. You touched a little bit on making even so the youth know about positions in law enforcement. So really it's very interesting, and it's not every day that I personally meet someone in law enforcement, so I'd love to. I'm sure the audience is curious as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. To give a little mission is just making sure that, I always say we're the ambassador of Islam, right?
Yeah.
The things that we're going to do is going to be, reflected on all our community. So, one is to connect with our community, give them the resources or guide them towards those resources, whether it's their rights as a citizen, while they're living in New York City or in the United States. Hearing their concerns, hearing their issues, and then being the bridge between the police department and the community. Giving them um, the perspective. What is required or what is needed by the Muslim community, so they can better serve the Muslim community. So we've done a lot of stuff related to that. We've had in the beginning, we've had meetings with the executive staffs from the police department, throughout the city, throughout different precincts, and bringing community members or community leaders into those meetings. So this way we can, one, connect them together, and the other is, making sure that, they serve each other. So these are little steps that we started in the beginning. Then now we came to a point that like we're gonna have our iftar dinner next week. You have a large gathering, sometimes 700 people come to the police headquarters to celebrate iftar with us. These are officers, these are community members, these are religious leaders, these are interfaith partners. We have partners from our Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Sikh community that come and celebrate iftar with us, or Ramadan, I should say, Ramadan, and a break a fast and an iftar program. So these are little steps that we do, that we connect our communities, connect our neighbors. Then it comes to a point that if there's a need, whether it's a natural disaster or any man-made incident, where we come together and we actually help our communities. For example, there was a huge flood many years back in Pakistan. We came together. I actually traveled there to go give the goods together. Then there was issue in Yemen. We came together. We gathered stuff to send stuff there. There were issues in Syria. We came together, to come as one community, to these are for the Muslim community, right? Then there was issues as far as hurricanes. We had containers full of stuff that we sent over to Puerto Rico when there was a huge hurricane disaster. Then, in Texas, we sent with the ICNA Relief and other partners that we came together and we did that stuff. So these are little things that, it's not only towards the Muslim community, but it's to every community that, that are neighbors and our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely, yes. I'm hearing lots of things related to community building, enhancing the relationships so that people who are in law enforcement and the community can support. You're not only helping locally, but you're helping abroad. So that's really amazing, the work that the Muslim officers have done to date, the Muslim Officer Society. And that's really, really incredible work. So, when it comes to what messages you would like, what you did say, you mentioned you do recruitment for youth into this field that maybe many aren't considering, or they hear about for the first time when they come to your community events. You have a platform now. What would you like to tell the audience who's listening about what it's like to do the work that you do and to join law enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a big step, and like I mentioned to you before, just if you look back 10 to 15 years ago, you didn't see that many of our youth getting involved. One, because the perfect example, like I mentioned to you, is we're the first generation here. We're still, our parents came here for us to have a better living. So they were struggling. They didn't never looked into any. Let's say civil service or any other the opportunities because they were too concentrated on just making sure that we have a better living for our future. So it's our turn now. So as we're growing, we're getting knowledge of all these opportunities that there are available, and that's why we try to highlight. Listen, I'm in the police department, but that doesn't mean that's the only career out there. So when we do speak to the youth, I always tell them diversify your talent. Yes, if you want to be a police officer, but go to school for something else also. So this way, if in case you're not happy with this career, or if you can't get in for some reason, at least you have a backup, so you don't waste your time or you waste your life. And for you is critical years of your life. So it's great whenever I speak to them. This is one of the best careers that not because I'm doing it, because it really is. It gives you the satisfaction of helping people. It gives you satisfaction of being in the front line when everybody's running away, to make a difference. The other thing is connecting with your community, giving them resources. Putting a smile on one person's face is worth satisfaction of like thousands. Like you could do thousands of things, but that one smile is a satisfaction of all. So there's a lot of things that you gain from it. But also I encourage them to go into federal law enforcement. I encourage them to go into different fields such as lawyer, doctor, which I know we have a lot of our community love being doctors, but but you got to diversify, get into the political limelight, go into volunteering from, as you're young, in high school and college, volunteer with your elected official. They're always looking for internships, a person to do internships. So take advantage of that. So this way you learn about the system, learn about what it takes for you, to better bring resources to your community, because there's a lot of things that we don't know that happens, whether it's how to write a bill, or how to get grants, or other things that you can learn from the elected officials. And then main thing, be involved in political limelight, become the next councilman, become the next Congress or senator or even president. So our community can do it, and inshallah, you'll see. In the next coming years, you'll see more and more Muslims in the elected field. So these are little things that we try to talk to them. It's not easy because I know we were all young once, and we thought that whoever told us anything, they're lying, or they don't know what they're talking about, because we know everything. But as you grow older, you realize, if certain things, if you would have listened to someone when you were growing, you probably could have shaped your life a little better. So these are the things that we try to talk to them also, and give them examples. How we messed up, how things that we made a mistake about, or how we thought about things. So this way they can really relate to it firsthand, instead of just someone just giving them lectures.
That is really very nice the way you shared everything, because I think career paths are very interesting. You shared that diversifying, you shared about how at the end of the day, the satisfaction that you've had in your own personal career has been so immense. Mashallah, it's really impressive. And, I'm going to ask you now to reflect back on all the different things that you've done. You've, worked, I know you've worked even with immigrant communities, you've worked related to domestic violence and different things. Is there any particular area that you want to highlight or discuss to
Hey,
share
listen,
with?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of areas, right? But before I even go into that, since we were mentioning about a Muslim Society, I
Yeah.
forgot to mention that we also do trips to different countries to build, like we call it Holy Cities trip, because we went to Israel, Palestine, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia to do Umrah, Hajj, so, and many more to come, right? But So that's also, building understanding and getting our, community to, not only experience history but also understand it firsthand. So those are some things also that we've done in the past years. As far as my experience, oh my God, there's a lot, right? But like I was mentioning to you before, the main thing is the satisfaction you get when you see somebody else happy, or someone else taken care of. There's incidents, where because of my work or involvement, are able to get, deceased or victim of crimes assistance, getting them back to their families. There were issues, because a lot of sometimes, when you come here as an immigrant, you might have a spouse back home, but you also get married here for some reason. And now, if they didn't know about it back home, you die, and now both families are claiming bodies, or or other resources, and then one happens to be of a different faith. It becomes a really big issue. One of my biggest one was to convincing a different faith family to let the body go and be as a Muslim, buried as a Muslim and with the family. So I don't want to go too much into that details, but I just wanted to say that until this day, I still think I probably was able to help that family, and they probably, I never met them, I never probably be able to meet them again, but it just gives me satisfaction that I was able to do something for a family. The other thing is youth. Like I mentioned to you, youth is a big thing, right? So we started a program in the NYPD called Soccer and Cricket. Who knew about cricket 10 years from now, like 10 years from before? But we were able to introduce it with the NYPD, where we provided, the NYPD provided uniform, transportation, fields, food, everything through the summer. And, I remember starting it in 2008, I believe it is. So I did it over 10, 11 years. I ran that program, obviously with the assistance of other brothers and sisters. But it's a successful event because, I run into individuals that probably started in 2008. Obviously, it's hundreds of people every year, and I can't remember every single one, but I guess when you put an impact on someone, they remember you. So whenever I run into someone, they're like, "Oh, we were one of your, people that play cricket for you." I'm like, "Oh my God," like, and these people, when you meet them, some of them are either police officers, lawyers, doctors, even successful business person, or doing something in their life that's positive. So that brings another perspective to it. That look, you can do small things that can make a huge difference in people's lives.
I mean, inshallah, that's really fantastic what you shared, and it actually reminds me. You mentioned the programming that you have. Could you also speak about like the Quran competitions and things? I believe ITVusa has been a part of some of these as well.
Yeah, you know what? Shame on me for not even thinking about that, right? Like, thank you for reminding me about that. Listen, ITV has done amazing work. I've called upon Shahid from ITV for numerous things, whether it's guidance, when dealing with somebody in the community, or whether it's, a issue, or reaching out to a scholar, or you name it, any little thing, ITV has always been there. But the biggest thing, I would say, the support that we got from ITV was for our Quran competition. We did one a smaller scale like a few years back, which was obviously successful. But it takes a lot to pull a huge event together, funding, resources, all that stuff. Because when you bring prizes and gifts and money, it attracts kids, right? I mean, it attracts everybody, human, but kids especially when they hear gifts or something. So last time, we did one, we had a small it was like a fun thing. It wasn't like a serious competition. But last one we did was a huge serious competition, where we actually had judges and students from throughout the city that came and participated. And what surprised me was there was a lot of female, and that's what also we try to do, is we try to get our young sisters and mothers to come and get involved in our community. So this way, they can one represent and bring it back. They always say, you can educate one person, it'll be one person, but if you educate one female, you can educate the whole village. So it's like it does make a difference. So it was very successful, and I think all our three finalists were all females also. So some people are like, oh, what's going on, I'm just saying, I was glad to do partnership such as Quran competition, where we had scholars who recited, and then amazing kids that came out and did their talent, showed our talent. And it's also about encouragement, encouraging our youth to do something positive, encouraging our kids to get involved in Islamic programs. Don't be afraid of who you are. Be a proud Muslim American. You could be American and you could be Muslim. You can do both. Don't think that you have to give up one or the other. So that's like a biggest thing that I would like to highlight to our kids also, is like, listen, don't be afraid of who you are, where you came from. That's why everyone always says it. I've heard it many times. I say it myself. You can go to Europe, you can go to Middle East, you can go anywhere. You can never say you're one of the person from that country. You come to America, soon as you land, you can say, I'm an American. You can't say I'm a French, you can't say I'm a Middle Eastern, I'm a Saudi, because here you're welcome immediately. So take advantage of that. Make sure that you highlight it positively. Make sure you're ambassador of Islam, especially, but also where you come from. Everyone's going to treat you or look at everyone they meet in the future just the way they had that interaction with you, whether it's with the work, whether it's your ethics, integrity, you name it. So it's very important. So these Quran competition is a great example, and looking forward to do many more, and we're always welcome to ideas and suggestions. Like if anybody has any idea or suggestion they think that we should do, or we should work on collaboration with other partners, we'll be happy to look into it and make sure that our community gets service either way. Like it doesn't have to be only law enforcement purposes. It could be anyway, which will help not only our community but also our society, because more people will join, more people will take part. And even we have family, officers that have family that live in these communities, so they benefit from it also.
Wonderful. Yes, mashallah. You've done an amazing job expressing about how any of us as citizens can work as ambassadors of peace, of Islam. And you yourself have embodied the ability to both serve the community, keep the city safe through what you do. And I'm wondering if you have any myths or anything you want to dispel about being in law enforcement. I will ask one. Do you like donuts? That's a question. That's a stereotype
Yeah.
I've heard. So
Well, obviously you're gonna hear that because it goes back to movies, right? Everything starts with a movie. That's how our perspective is. We look at something and we tend to believe it. Obviously, now the cities are no matter. New York City is always alive, right? But if you go into small towns, you'll see most of the city they close after 10 o'clock sometimes, some no later than 2 o'clock, right? But the police officers are there. The police officers are out there serving in the middle of the night, so this way you can have that great sleep that that the night is made for, right? So so what happens, what is usually open at night? Either a coffee shop, or now it's obviously like it's a different story. So that's how I think it started with the cops were always hanging out in the coffee shop or the donut shop. So it went into that joke, which carried on. So I wouldn't say that. Obviously, you'll see, especially now, health conscious people. So, you won't even see that many cops even eating donuts because they are so into their health. So, it is a myth, and I think it's going to continue forever, because once it's made, there's no way to get rid of it. But yeah, that is one of the myths. The other thing um, I would say is that, you know, um, it's not all what you see, or what is portrayed. They are really dedicated people that really take this job to make a difference in their community. And I'm not talking about only Muslims. I'm talking about every single officer. Like human, there's going to be bad apples everywhere. We have them in our Muslim community. We have them in every profession. You name it. But that doesn't mean that should tarnish everyone that really took this job to make a difference in people's lives. So I really have to say that I've met some really dedicated individuals throughout my career, non-Muslims, that actually guided me. They didn't think that, they didn't care that I was a Muslim, or I was an immigrant, that they had to turn look at me a different way. They actually guided me. They advocated for me for positions. So there are really good people out there. We can't let action of one or few to cloud our judgment when overall. And obviously you're hearing all these things that that's the mainstream now, is defund the police, defund the police. I have to say, the more you defund, the less resources you will get in our community. The less protection you will get in our community. I think the biggest people that are affected by this rhetoric is our immigrant communities, because the violent crime is going up, where our community is the one that is victimized. And if we don't have the resources, we can't, be protected. Forget about just the protection, right? Like, the resources also go into programs like I just mentioned, cricket and soccer, right? That was funded by the police department. So if you defund the police, that means you just took out something from our community. Yet other services need help, mental health and, homelessness, and, there's many other agencies that do need extra help, but at the same time, I think, if you give, the police department or certain, like the way I can speak about, what my experience is, if you give us, certain type of fundings for certain type of programs, we know we're going to have dedicated people there. We know they're going to be, be there to connect with the youth or the community. So, it sounds great, like defund the police to get rid of, money, but I think it's going to affect our community most, rather than help our community.
Thank you for sharing that, and for sharing everything you have about the NYPD Muslim Officer Society and the work you've done to enhance, the relationship between law officers and community. I think we learned a lot about all that you've done, and what we ask everyone on this show, just because it is the month of Ramadan. Do you mind sharing on a personal note what your favorite thing about Ramadan is, or what you do, and if you do anything different celebrating with the position that you hold?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's another. Ramadan is great, right? Because it gives us time to connect with each other, reflect, and I think the position, since you mentioned the position I hold, it actually gave me and other officers an opportunity to teach others what is Ramadan. There are individuals that we work with, co-workers that, start fasting with us just because they want to be, close to us, or, relate to us. So it gives a big, it puts a big impact, a big boost to relationship building, to celebrate Ramadan together. And the other thing is now, we have individuals that, come together and break fast in each police, some police stations. It's not every police station yet, but it's getting there. We already have 4 or 5 stations that, are coming together and breaking, fast together. So that's, again, building relationship with others. And, it's a beautiful thing. We're coming into, one, obviously our big iftar at the police headquarters, but now we're starting to do smaller ones throughout the city, like different boroughs, to highlight, and give an opportunity for our Muslim officers to, connect with the leadership and connect with our community. So I think the best thing is, having these events, having these opportunities to, connect with our neighbors and their fellow officers. I think that's a big boost.
Yes, I agree. That is a wonderful, and I hope that you can continue to have numerous events, opportunities to present, educate fellow Muslims and non-Muslims about things. And I guess I will leave this last part for you to share anything that you wanted to share that I didn't get to. But I also did have one last question, and it's,
Mhm.
if someone that is a citizen that's living in New York or anywhere here in the United States, and they're curious about learning more about their rights and responsibilities, what advice, like where should they go to learn, and who should they go talk to?
Yeah, I mean, listen. First thing, these resources are obviously available online. It's I even believe it's available in the NYPD website. There's also, New York City being such a diverse and beautiful city, that there's resources like there's a commissioner of immigrant affairs. They have resources in different languages, what your rights are, and what you should be looking forward to. It could be a illegal immigrant, and that doesn't mean that your salary or your resource, the work that you do should be compromised. There are ways that you can even find out. We have like day laborers doing construction. Some of them get paid pennies, but if you're a legal resident, you'll probably get hundreds. So but that doesn't mean just because you're not documented that you should be getting paid less. So there are resources to even find out about that, to get your uh, you know information about your rights as far as labor work, and citizen or anything like that. And the other thing, I would be really missed that if I don't share this, is that there are career available for our youth. There are opportunities available for our youth, such as summer youth academy. There's a summer employment opportunity, and then as you go into college, there's a cadet program where the youth can be in college. The NYPD pays for your tuition, and also you get a part-time job with the NYPD while you're in college. The only catch is that you have to serve in the police department for 2 years. But again, you don't have to. You can still take advantage of that and then just decline it. But even if you do take full opportunities of the tuition and everything, you can serve 2 years and then you know go on to your next career. But there are available opportunities available. It gives you one insight of a different career. Gives you a job. You don't have to worry about looking for a job while you're going to college. The other is that it keeps you out of trouble. It keeps you on a straight line, because you got to make sure that to be part of these programs, you have to stay out of trouble. So these are a lot of a few things. And then if you want to volunteer in your community, there's a auxiliary police program where you can be eyes and ears of your community and also be part of change in your community.
That's fantastic. Yes, inshallah. I hope people listened and heard about these opportunities, fantastic opportunities coming up this summer and for years to come, inshallah. So thank you again, Jazakallah khair, for taking the time to talk to all of us about everything that you've done. On behalf of ITVusa, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope you can continue to come. We are live every day through the month of Ramadan for this show, our Prosperous Ramadan. Again, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Jazakallah khair, and
Thank you.
assalamu
Yeah,
alaikum.
thank you for doing all this work, for bringing resources to our community. Thank you.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.